Hey everybody, Adam here, and I wanted to talk real quick about how many vehicles I've driven in my life or in my career. We're doing a quick story time here. I had done a previous video to this, and then watching it back, I realized that my conservative figures, I had made a mistake, and I didn't want to exaggerate. So I already have some information here, and then we're just going to update it. So in the 90s, I worked at Volvo, Subaru, Suzuki, and I had figured we did 25 cars a week, or I was in 25 cars a week on average, because 5 a day, 5 days a week. So 25 times 4 times 24 for 2 years that I worked there, 2,400. We're going to use that. We're going to use that figure, and we're going to call that Adam's career in the 90s. I've been in this auto industry for 25 years, roughly. We're doing conservative figures here. So in the 2000s, I was saying I did about 3 vehicles a day. I was doing auto detailing. Sometimes that would help with the rust proofing. But the early 2000s, I'm talking before we became a rust check in 2012. So I figured about 3 vehicles a day, or 15 a week, times 4 for months. Times 4 for weeks in a month, times 12 for months in a year, times 10. 10 years. This is lowball figures. Sometimes I did a lot more. I can remember spraying 13 vehicles, 10 vehicles. So I'm saying just lowball it at 3. And I'm including, I'm basing it off a year-long work history, because I was doing auto detailing as well, not just oil sprays or rust proofings seasonally. And this is why I'm re-recording this video, because what I had realized after the fact is that I was basing some calculations in a previous iteration of this video off of four vehicles a day times the whole year, which isn't accurate, because we don't work year-round at RustCheck. It's a seasonal business, as many of you know. It really kicks off in August and goes until January. So in that whole season, I'm just going to say that just lowball it at 300 a year, 300 a season. So this is the figure that I'm going to adjust right now. So let's just lowball it at 300 a season, and we've been doing this since 2012, right? So we've been a rust check since 2012. So obviously that's 10 years on the button. It's 3,000, not rocket science. Now look, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I haven't been working at our rust check since 2012 because I was doing other things for a few years. So out of that 10 years, let's cut it in half and say I've been responsible in and out of the vehicles for half that time, or 5 years. So let's say 1,500. Okay. And in a previous video, I said I'm not going to count my years in Saskatchewan at a place called Saskatoon Auto Clean, which I had calculated we did 10 vehicles a day times 5 days a week times 4 weeks in a month times 12 months in a year, for a total of 2,400. And the reason I wasn't going to count it is because the reason I'm not going to count it is because I wasn't driving them all. Sometimes other guys would drive them in, but these figures, these lowball figures that I've circled in red here, are vehicles that I myself have driven. Sometimes, like back in the 90s, we used to deliver these vehicles out of town. Around my shop here, I like to drive the vehicles around the shop to test the brakes and whatnot before I give it back to the customer. There were years where we would have to go and deliver vehicles. So these are all conservative figures. Like I said, we've done a lot more in some years, but let's just add these up. The 90s was 2,400 Volvo, Subaru, Suzuki years. The early 2000s was 7,200. Mostly my car detailing years. And then recently 1,500, which is super conservative. That brings us to 11,100. And then also, if you want to tack on, say, the 20 or so that I've owned and friends and family's vehicles, you could say, so 11,120 would be conservative. I tacked on it. And in the previous video, I tacked on 20 vehicles for ones that I've owned. These are just the ones that I'm referring to here are in my career. So, grand total, there's my math, 11,120 vehicles I have driven in my 25-year career of being in the auto industry. Those are conservative figures, lowballing it. I've probably done a lot more. I'm not going to say double, but I've probably done a lot more than that. Probably more vehicles than anybody. I've probably driven more vehicles than anybody you'll ever meet or anybody you ever know. I was saying in a previous video, I have customers that come in who are single vehicle owners that have only driven one vehicle their entire lives, and some of these customers are retired. So I know what I don't know what it's like to only have driven one vehicle, and when I give my advice about what vehicles I like and what I don't, now it's coming from a guy who's driven well over 10,000 vehicles. Take care. Thank you. Bye bye.